The iron shackles were too tight around Sera's wrists, leaving marks that would bruise by morning. Not that it mattered anymore. Nothing mattered when you were standing on an auction block, being sold like livestock because your own pack had declared you worthless. The auction house reeked of desperation and expensive cologne, a nauseating combination that made Sera's stomach turn. Wealthy alphas filled the velvet-lined seats, their eyes gleaming with predatory interest as they assessed the omegas being paraded before them. Some were here for legitimate mates. Most were here for something far less honorable. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Sera kept her head down, her long auburn hair falling forward to hide the tears that threatened to spill. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of these wolves who saw her as nothing more than a commodity. But the shackles, the stage, the leering faces, it was too much. Lot 17, the auctioneer announced, his voice booming through the ornate hall. Female Omega, age 24, Sera Blackwood, of the Crescent Moon Pack, previously mated and rejected. Household skills include cooking, cleaning, basic healing. Starting bid, 500 silver. Previously mated and rejected. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sera felt the shift in the room immediately. Interest cooling, alphas leaning back in their seats, dismissing her before the bidding even began. A rejected Omega was damaged goods. Everyone knew that. But the auctioneer wasn't finished with her humiliation. Full disclosure as required by territorial law, he continued, consulting his papers with clinical detachment. The Omega has been examined by 3 separate healers and declared barren, unable to conceive or carry pups, price adjusted accordingly. The words hit Sera like physical blows. Barren, unable to conceive, worthless. She'd known this moment was coming, had known since the auction house healer had examined her that morning, prodding and poking with cold efficiency before delivering the same verdict the Crescent Moon healers had given. The same verdict that had led to her rejection. The same verdict that had destroyed her life. But hearing it announced to a room full of strangers, hearing the collective intake of breath, the murmurs of disappointment, the scraping of chairs as alphas prepared to leave, it broke something inside her. "I'm barren," Sera sobbed, the words torn from her throat before she could stop them. Her legs buckled, only the chains attached to posts on either side of the platform keeping her upright. "I'm broken. I can't give anyone what they need." Shame burned through her as she wept openly on the stage. This was it, the absolute lowest point of her existence. Rejected by her mate, cast out by her pack, and now, sobbing at an auction where no one even wanted to bid on her. The auctioneer shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should move to the next lot," he suggested to someone off stage. "This Omega is clearly in distress. 1 million gold." The voice cut through the hall like a blade. Deep, commanding, absolute. Every head turned toward the back of the room where the voice had originated. Sera looked up through her tears, hardly believing what she'd heard. 1 million gold? That was more than the cost of a small territory. More than anyone had paid for any Omega in recorded history. It had to be a mistake. The auctioneer's face had gone pale. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that bid?" 1 million gold. The voice came again, and this time Sera saw him, a man rising from the shadows at the back of the hall, moving forward with the lethal grace of a born predator. For Sera Blackwood. The crowd erupted into chaos, alphas jumping to their feet, shouting protests and questions. The auctioneer frantically checking his records. Guards moving to intercept the bidder before recognizing him and immediately dropping to one knee. Because Sera recognized him too, now that he'd stepped into the light. Everyone in the territories knew that face, those storm gray eyes, that commanding presence that made every other alpha in the room look like children playing at dominance. Alpha King Cade Thorn, the most powerful wolf in 5 territories, unmated for 7 years despite every pack trying to offer him their finest daughters, said to be cursed by the moon goddess herself. And he was walking straight toward her. Sera's breath caught in her throat as he mounted the steps to the auction block. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell to his collar and a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He looked like he'd been carved from granite, all sharp angles and unyielding strength, but it was his eyes that held her frozen. Not cold, as she'd expected from the rumors. Not cruel. Instead, they held something that looked almost like understanding. "Your Majesty," the auctioneer stammered, dropping into a deep bow. We didn't know you were attending tonight. If we had prepared, the bid stands," Cade interrupted, his eyes never leaving Sera's face. 1,000,000 gold for this Omega. I trust there are no other offers?" Silence. Every alpha in the room knew better than to compete with their king. "Then the auction is concluded." Cade reached forward, and Sera flinched instinctively, but his touch, when it came, was gentle. He unlocked her shackles with a key he'd somehow procured, the iron cuffs falling away to clatter on the wooden platform. Sera's wrists were ringed with red marks, some bleeding where the metal had cut into her skin. Cade's jaw tightened as he saw them, his hand hovering just above the injuries without quite touching. "Can you walk?" His voice was quieter now, meant only for her. Sera nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Her legs shook as she took a step forward, and Cade steadied her with a hand at her elbow. Not possessive, not demanding, just there. "Your Majesty," a voice called from the crowd. An older alpha, wealthy by his clothes, with calculating eyes. "Surely you realize this Omega is defective. Barren. She cannot give you heirs." "The kingdom needs." "The kingdom," Cade said, his voice dropping to a dangerous level that made every wolf in the room submit instinctively, "will concern itself with my choices when I ask for their opinion, which I have not." He turned back to the auctioneer. "Have her belongings sent to the palace. We're leaving." Before Sera could process what was happening, Cade was guiding her down the steps, through the stunned crowd, and out into the cool night air. A carriage waited, black and unmarked, with a driver who asked no questions as Cade helped Sera inside. The moment the door closed, sealing them in the intimate space, Sera found her voice. "Why?" she whispered, staring at the Alpha King who had just spent a fortune on an Omega everyone else considered worthless. "Why would you bid on me? I can't give you what a king needs. I can't give you heirs or strengthen your bloodline or—" "Good," Cade interrupted, and for the first time, the harsh lines of his face softened slightly. "Then you're perfect for me." Sera stared at him in complete confusion. "I don't understand." Cade leaned back against the carriage seat, his eyes distant as if looking at something only he could see. "Do you know why I've remained unmated for 7 years, Sera Blackwood, while every pack in the territories has thrown their daughters at me?" She shook her head mutely. "Because I can't mate," he said simply. "Not in the way that matters. Not in the way that creates bonds and produces heirs." His gray eyes met hers again, and in them she saw her own pain reflected back. "I'm cursed. Have been since the day I took the throne. Any Omega I mate with will die within a year. 3 have tried already, believing they could break the curse. All 3 are buried in the royal crypts." Sera's breath caught. "The moon goddess punished me for the sins of my father," Cade finished. "He was a tyrant, killed his own brother to secure the throne, murdered anyone who opposed him. When he finally died and I inherited his crown, the moon goddess appeared to me in a vision. She said the bloodline was tainted, that I would never know the joy of a true mate bond, that any Omega who tried to complete the bond with me would pay with her life." His hands clenched into fists on his knees. "So I've stayed alone, unmated, watching every pack in the territories parade their daughters before me, knowing I can never accept any of them, knowing that if I did, I'd be signing their death warrant." Sera's mind reeled. The great Alpha King Cade Thorne, envied by every wolf in 5 territories, was cursed. Alone, unable to have what every wolf was born craving, a mate, a bond, a family. "But then why?" she started, her voice barely audible. "Why buy me?" Cade's expression shifted into something that might have been hope, if it weren't so heavily weighted with resignation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Because you can't conceive. Because the curse specifically prevents offspring, prevents the tainted bloodline from continuing. But you, Sera Blackwood." He leaned forward slightly. You were already declared barren, which means the curse has no power over you. You're the first Omega I've met in 7 years, who I can actually have near me without fearing for her life. Understanding dawned slowly, like sunrise over a dark landscape. He didn't buy her in spite of her barrenness. He bought her because of it. You want a mate who's safe from your curse? Sera breathed. I want, Cade corrected gently, to not be alone anymore. I want someone who understands what it's like to be declared broken by forces beyond their control. Someone who won't look at me and see a king and a curse. Someone who might, eventually, see just me. Tears spilled down Sera's cheeks again, but these were different from the ones she'd shed on the auction block. These came from a place deeper than shame, from the small, fragile part of her that had believed she'd never be wanted again. I'm still broken, she whispered, barren. I can't give you children even if your curse allowed it. Then we'll be broken together, Cade said. I've spent 7 years building this kingdom, strengthening its defenses, securing its borders. I have nephew who will inherit after me. The succession is secure. What I need now isn't heirs. His voice dropped lower. I need someone who understands that being whole doesn't always mean being perfect. That sometimes survival is its own kind of strength. The carriage rolled through the night, carrying them away from the auction house and toward a future Sera couldn't have imagined an hour ago. She studied the Alpha King across from her, this powerful wolf who had just revealed his deepest vulnerability to a stranger. What happens now? She asked. Now, Cade said. You rest. Heal. The palace has healers who can treat those wounds on your wrists. Tomorrow we can discuss what arrangement you're comfortable with. I won't force a bond on you, Sera. The curse prevents it anyway. But companionship, partnership, those are things we can build if you're willing. And if I'm not willing? The question came out more challenging than she'd intended, but Cade didn't seem offended. Then you're free to go, he said simply. I bought your freedom from that auction house, not your obedience. You're not a prisoner. He paused, seeming to search for the right word. You're someone I'm hoping might understand what it's like to be called broken when you're really just different. Sera touched the raw skin on her wrists, feeling the sting of the shackle marks. Different. She'd spent 3 years since her rejection trying to understand what was wrong with her, why her body refused to conceive, why her mate, Marcus, had looked at her with such disgust when the healer delivered the news, why her own pack had sold her rather than keep a barren Omega. But maybe there was nothing wrong. Maybe she was just different. I'll stay, she heard herself say. At least for now. I'll stay and see if 2 broken wolves can figure out how to be whole together. For the first time since she'd seen him, Cade smiled. It transformed his entire face, softening the harsh lines, reaching his eyes in a way that made him look years younger. Then welcome to the palace, Sera Blackwood, he said. I think you'll find it's full of wolves who don't quite fit the mold. The palace loomed in the distance, its towers dark against the star-filled sky. Sera watched it approach with a mixture of trepidation and something she barely recognized any more hope. The palace was nothing like Sera had imagined. She'd expected cold stone halls and austere furnishings, the kind of harsh environment that matched the rumors about the cursed Alpha King. Instead, she found herself in a guest suite that was almost cozy. Warm tapestries covered the walls, a fire crackled in the hearth, and the bed looked softer than anything she'd slept on in 3 years. These will be your rooms for now, Cade said, standing in the doorway rather than entering, maintaining a respectful distance that Sera appreciated more than he could know. The healers will be here shortly to treat your wrists. If you need anything, pull that cord. He gestured to an embroidered bell pull near the bed. Someone will come immediately. Thank you, Sera said, her voice small in the large room. Cade nodded, turning to leave, then paused. Sera? What you said at the auction, about being broken. You're not. You're just surrounded by people who don't understand that different isn't the same as lesser. He left before she could respond, the door closing softly behind him. Sera stood alone in the middle of the room, her whole body trembling with exhaustion and overwhelming emotion. 3 hours ago, she'd been on an auction block, sobbing while strangers dismissed her as worthless. Now she was in a palace, told she was wanted precisely because of what everyone else saw as her greatest flaw. A knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Miss Sera? I'm Healer Maeve. His Majesty sent me to tend your injuries." The woman who entered was older, with kind eyes and gentle hands. She carried a basket of supplies and moved with the efficiency of someone who knew her craft well. "Let me see those wrists," Maeve said, guiding Sera to sit on the bed. As she examined the raw, bleeding skin, her expression grew dark. Those shackles were far too tight. Unnecessarily so. The auction house will hear about this. "It doesn't matter," Sera said dully. "I'm out of there now." "It matters," Maeve corrected, beginning to clean the wounds with a solution that stung but quickly numbed the pain. Every Omega deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their circumstances. His Majesty is very particular about that. Sera watched the healer work, processing this information. "You know about me? About why he bought me?" Maeve's hands never paused in their careful ministrations. "I know the king acquired an Omega at auction tonight. The rest isn't my business unless you choose to share it." The non-judgment in her voice made Sera's eyes sting with fresh tears. "I'm Barren," she said, testing the word in this new environment. 3 healers confirmed it. That's why I was rejected. Why I was sold. "I see." Maeve began wrapping Sera's wrists in clean bandages. "And how do you feel about that diagnosis?" The question caught Sera off guard. No one had ever asked her how she felt. They'd just told her what she was and moved on. "I feel broken," she admitted, "like I failed at the most basic thing an Omega is supposed to do. Marcus, my mate, he said I was useless. That the moon goddess had made a mistake with me." Maeve's hands tightened fractionally on the bandages before she forced herself to relax. "Your former mate sounds like a fool. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. She makes wolves for different purposes." "What purpose could there be in being barren?" Sera's voice cracked. "What am I supposed to do if I can't have pups?" "Live," Maeve said simply. "Heal. Find meaning in something other than reproduction. There's more to being an Omega than bearing children, despite what some narrow-minded alphas believe." She finished securing the bandages and began packing her supplies. His Majesty understands that better than most. Sera's head jerked up. "You know about his curse?" "Everyone in the inner palace knows," Maeve confirmed. "It's impossible to hide why 3 young Omegas died after trying to mate with the king. But what most people don't know is how much that curse has cost him. Not just in terms of loneliness, but in watching everyone assume he's staying unmated by choice, that he's too proud or too particular." Her eyes met Sera's. "When really he's just trying to protect potential mates from his father's sins." "That's not fair," Sera said, surprised by the vehemence in her own voice. "He shouldn't have to pay for what his father did." "No," Maeve agreed softly. "He shouldn't. Just like you shouldn't have to be cast aside for something you can't control." She stood, basket in hand. "Get some rest, Miss Sera. Tomorrow will be easier." They always are after the first night. After the healer left, Sera changed into the nightgown that had been laid out on the bed, soft fabric that felt like clouds against her skin, and climbed under the covers. The bed was as comfortable as it looked, and she should have fallen asleep immediately after, the trauma of the day. But her mind wouldn't quiet. She kept replaying the auction, Cade's voice cutting through her despair, his gentle hands removing her shackles. The way he'd looked at her not with pity or disgust, but with understanding. "Then you're perfect for me." No one had ever said she was perfect before. Not even Marcus. In the early days before the bond had revealed her barrenness, Marcus had said she was adequate, acceptable, never perfect. But Cade had looked at her broken, sobbing, worthless in the eyes of everyone in that room and declared her perfect. Because she couldn't give him what he couldn't take. Because they were both cursed in different ways. Because maybe, together, they could create something that worked even if it wasn't what anyone else expected. Sera touched her bandaged wrists, feeling the dull ache beneath the wrappings. Physical wounds would heal. She'd learned that lesson over the past 3 years. It was the deeper wounds that left permanent scars. But maybe, in this palace with this cursed king, she could start healing those too. Sera woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back the auction. The shackles. Cade's voice cutting through her despair. 1,000,000 gold. She sat up slowly, wincing as the movement pulled at her bandaged wrists. The room looked different in daylight. Larger, more elegant, with details she'd been too overwhelmed to notice last night. Paintings of forests and mountains hung on the walls. Fresh flowers filled a vase by the window. Someone had laid out clothes for her, a simple dress in deep blue, far finer than anything she'd owned in years. A soft knock interrupted her examination. "Miss Sera? May I enter? I'm Lyra, assigned as your lady's maid." Sera's throat tightened. A lady's maid, like she was someone important rather than purchased property. "Come in." The woman who entered was young, maybe 20, with warm brown skin and an easy smile. "Good morning. I hope you slept well. His Majesty asked me to help you dress and show you to breakfast." She moved to the wardrobe, laying out undergarments with practiced efficiency. "The blue will look lovely with your coloring. Brings out your eyes." Sera touched her auburn hair self-consciously. "I can dress myself." "I'm sure you can," Lyra said cheerfully. "But His Majesty was very specific that you be treated as an honored guest, not a servant. That means accepting help, even if it feels strange at first." Her smile softened. "I know it's an adjustment, but you're safe here, Miss Sera. The king doesn't tolerate anyone being mistreated in his household." The genuine kindness in her voice made something in Sera's chest loosen slightly. She allowed Lyra to help her into the dress, grateful when the maid carefully worked around her bandaged wrists without comment. "There," Lyra said, adjusting the final laces. "Beautiful. Now, breakfast is served in the morning room when His Majesty is dining privately. He asked that you join him if you felt comfortable doing so." Sera's stomach knotted with sudden nervousness. Breakfast with the Alpha King, alone. What would they even talk about? What did you say to someone who'd bought you at auction and then revealed he was cursed? "What if I'm not comfortable?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Lyra didn't seem bothered by the question. "Then I'll have a tray brought to your room and let His Majesty know you need more time." "He won't be offended, Miss Sera. He understands that trust has to be earned." The fact that she had a choice, real choice, made all the difference. Sera straightened her shoulders. "I'll go. But what's he like? When he's not being the Alpha King?" Lyra's expression turned thoughtful as she led Sera through elegant hallways. "Lonely," she said quietly. "Kind, but isolated. He carries the weight of his father's sins and refuses to let anyone else share the burden." She glanced at Sera. "Maybe that will change now." They reached an arched doorway where 2 guards stood at attention. They nodded respectfully to Sera, not with the dismissive glances she'd grown used to, but with actual acknowledgement of her presence. "Miss Sera Blackwood," Lyra announced, then stepped aside. The morning room was smaller than Sera expected, with windows overlooking a garden where early roses bloomed. Cade stood by one of those windows, hands clasped behind his back, still as a statue. He wore simple clothes today, dark trousers and a white shirt open at the collar, looking less like a king and more like a man. He turned when she entered, and Sera caught the flash of relief in his eyes before he masked it. "Sera, I'm glad you came." He gestured to the table where food had been laid out. "Please, sit. Are your wrists healing?" "Healer Maeve did an excellent job," Sera said, taking the chair he'd indicated. "Thank you for sending her." Cade settled across from her, but didn't immediately reach for food. "I want to apologize for last night, for the circumstances that brought you here. You deserved better than to be sold like property." "You saved me from that," Sera pointed out. "Why apologize?" "Because I benefited from your misfortune." His gray eyes were steady on hers. "I told you about my curse, about why I bought you, but I didn't give you time to process it. Didn't ask if you wanted to be part of my solution." He leaned forward slightly. "So, I'm asking now, Sera. Will you stay? Not because you're obligated, but because you choose to?" The question hung between them, weighted with importance. Sera studied the Alpha across from her, this powerful king, who could command armies but was asking her, a discarded Omega, for her choice. What exactly would staying mean? She asked carefully. Cade considered this, his expression thoughtful. Companionship, primarily. I've been alone for 7 years, because I couldn't risk harming anyone. You're the first Omega I've met who's safe from the curse. I won't lie, I'm hoping we can build something together. Friendship, at minimum. Partnership if we're fortunate. Perhaps even... He paused. Perhaps even something that resembles what a mate bond should be, minus the supernatural connection the curse prevents. You want me to act as your mate? Sera's heart began to race. In what capacity? Whatever capacity you're comfortable with, Cade said immediately. I'm not expecting physical intimacy, though the curse wouldn't prevent it since you can't conceive. But that would be entirely your choice, on your timeline. What I need most is someone to talk to. Someone who sees me as Cade rather than the cursed king. Someone who understands what it's like to be rejected for circumstances beyond their control. He reached for a pitcher, pouring tea with steady hands. In practical terms, you'd act as the palace's lady, attend state, functions with me, help manage household affairs if you're interested, live here as my equal, not my property. In exchange, you'd have safety, comfort, and status that protects you from ever being auctioned again. It was more than Sera had dared hope for. Safety, respect, a purpose beyond simply surviving, but years of rejection had taught her to be cautious. What about when you're done with me? She asked bluntly. When the novelty wears off or you meet someone who can actually break your curse? What happens to the Barren Omega then? Pain flashed across Cade's face. 3 Omegas have already died trying to break my curse, Sera. I won't risk a 4th, ever. His voice roughened. And I don't do novelty. When I commit to something, I commit completely. If you stay for life. Not because you're bound here, but because I'm choosing you, permanently. The certainty in his voice sent shivers down Sera's spine. You don't even know me. I know you sobbed at an auction, and still found the strength to stand afterward, Cade said softly. I know you were rejected and sold, but you haven't let it make you cruel. I know you're sitting here questioning my motives instead of just accepting what I'm offering, which shows wisdom. He set down his teacup. I know enough to want to know more. Sera's throat tightened with emotion she couldn't quite name. When was the last time anyone had wanted to know more about her? Marcus had never asked about her dreams or fears. Her pack had stopped seeing her as a person the moment she was declared barren. But this cursed king was looking at her like she mattered. I'll stay, she said, the words feeling like stepping off a cliff. Not forever yet, but I'll stay and see if this can work. The smile that broke across Cade's face was radiant. That's all I'm asking. One day at a time, Sera Blackwood. One day at a time. They ate breakfast together, and Sera was surprised by how easy conversation became. Cade asked about her life before the rejection, not the painful parts, but the good memories. Her love of gardening, the herb lore her grandmother had taught her, her talent for sketching, though she hadn't drawn anything in 3 years. In return, he told her about the palace, the advisors who meant well but exhausted him, his nephew, Leo, who was 7 and obsessed with dragons, the hidden library in the East Wing, where Cade escaped when court politics became too much. You like to read? Sera asked, surprised. Constantly. Cade's eyes lit up in a way that made him look younger. History, philosophy, terrible romance novels that would horrify my counsel if they knew. Sera laughed before she could stop herself. The sound felt rusty, like she'd forgotten how. The fearsome Alpha King reads romance novels? The fearsome Alpha King is a wolf who likes happy endings, he corrected with mock dignity. Even if I can't have my own. The words sobered them both. Sera set down her fork. Tell me about the curse. The whole story, not just what you said last night. Cade's expression shuddered slightly, but he nodded. My father, Aldrich Thorne, was the youngest of 3 brothers. By all rights, he should never have been king, but he was ambitious, ruthless. He orchestrated accidents for his older brothers, making their deaths look natural. When he finally took the throne, he ruled through fear, executed anyone who questioned him, used Omegas as breeding stock rather than cherished mates. His hands clenched into fists on the table. I was 15 when I realized what kind of man my father really was. I spent the next 10 years gathering allies, planning to overthrow him before he could do more damage. But before I could act, he died. Heart failure during a feast. Natural causes, though many suspected poison. Did you? Sera started to ask. No, Cade said firmly. I wanted him gone, but I wanted justice more. I wanted him to face judgment for his crimes. Instead, he died peacefully, and I inherited his tainted throne. He stared at his hands. The moon goddess appeared to me during my coronation. Everyone else was celebrating, but I felt her presence like ice in my veins. She said the Thorn bloodline was corrupted, that my father's sins had cursed his descendants, that I would rule, but I would rule alone. Any Omega who completed a mate bond with me would die within a year. But you tried anyway, Sera said softly. 3 times. 3 times I believed love would be stronger than the curse, Cade confirmed, his voice hollow. 3 times I watched Omegas I cared for waste away, their bodies rejecting the bond, dying slowly despite every healer's effort. He met her eyes. The last one, Eliza, she knew the risk. Insisted she could break it. She lasted 8 months before the curse claimed her. I held her as she died, and I swore never to put another Omega through that. Never to let hope turn into horror. Tears tracked down Sera's cheeks. I'm so sorry. So you see why you're perfect, Cade said, his voice rough with emotion. You can't conceive, which is exactly what the curse prevents. You're the loophole the moon goddess didn't account for. With you, I can have companionship without death, connection without sacrifice. Sera wiped her tears with her bandaged wrist. We're both paying for other people's sins. You for your father's crimes. Me for, I don't even know what I did wrong. Why I was made barren. You weren't made wrong, Cade said fiercely. You were made different. And that difference is the only reason we can sit here together without me fearing for your life. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. May I? Sera nodded, and his fingers closed gently around hers. The touch sent warmth up her arm, not the explosive recognition of a mate bond, but something equally powerful. Understanding. Acceptance. We're going to figure this out together, Cade promised. 2 broken wolves making something whole. The days that followed fell into a cautious rhythm. Sera explored the palace with Lyra as her guide, marveling at its size and beauty. The hidden library Cade had mentioned became her sanctuary, a circular room filled floor to ceiling with books, a window seat perfect for reading. She found Cade there on her 3rd afternoon, sprawled in a leather chair with a book propped on his chest. He looked up when she entered, surprise giving way to pleasure. I should have known you'd find this place eventually, he said, sitting up. It's the best room in the palace. It's incredible, Sera breathed, running her fingers along leather spines. I've never seen so many books. They're yours to read whenever you want. Cade marked his place and set the book aside. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. There's a state dinner tomorrow night. Visiting dignitaries from the Northern Territories. I was hoping you'd attend with me. Sera's stomach dropped. What would I be? As my companion, Cade said carefully. I won't announce you as anything specific yet. That's your choice when you're ready. But I'd like you there. I'll be fending off marriage proposals from their daughters all night, and having you beside me would make it clear my interest lies elsewhere. You want to use me as a shield, Sera said, not quite managing to keep the hurt from her voice. I want you as my partner, Cade corrected, rising to cross to where she stood. But if you're not comfortable with public events yet, I understand. I can make excuses. Sera thought about the auction house, the leering faces, the humiliation of being declared worthless in front of strangers. Tomorrow night would be different. She'd be entering as the Alpha King's companion, not as property for sale. What would I wear? She asked. Hope flared in Cade's eyes. Lyra has already prepared options, and I have. Something for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a silver bracelet etched with moon phases. It was my mother's. She died when I was young, but I remember her wearing this. I thought, if you're appearing as my companion, you should wear something that marks you as under my protection. The bracelet glowed softly in the library's light. Sera reached for it with trembling fingers. Your mother's? Cade. That's yours now, he said firmly, if you'll accept it. Not as a collar or a mark of ownership, as a symbol that you're valued, protected, important to me. Sera's vision blurred with tears as Cade fastened the bracelet around her wrist, just above where her bandages had finally been removed. The silver was warm against her skin, and for the first time since her rejection, she felt like she might actually be worth something. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for staying, Cade replied. For giving us a chance. The state dinner was both better and worse than Sera had feared. Better because Cade never left her side, his presence a steady anchor in a sea of unfamiliar faces. Worse because those faces studied her with undisguised curiosity and, in some cases, hostility. Who is she? Sera heard whispered more than once. Why would the king bring a nobody to such an important dinner? I heard he bought her at auction. Can you imagine? Sera kept her head high, the weight of her mother's bracelet a reminder that she belonged here. Cade had chosen her. That had to mean something. The northern alpha, Ronan, was a bear of a man with calculating eyes. He'd brought his daughter, Celeste, beautiful, accomplished, and clearly expecting to leave the dinner with a betrothal announcement. Your Majesty, Ronan said, his gaze dismissing Sera entirely. My Celeste has been looking forward to this dinner for months. She studied your kingdom's history, learned your customs. She would make an exemplary queen. I'm sure she would, Cade said politely. For some other king. Celeste's smile tightened. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but surely you're not considering. She glanced at Sera with barely concealed disdain. Her. She has no rank, no connections, no ability to strengthen your bloodline. Careful. Cade's voice dropped to a dangerous level. You're speaking about my companion. I won't tolerate disrespect. The table fell silent. Ronan's face darkened. Your Majesty, with respect, the kingdom needs heirs. This Omega cannot provide them. We've all heard the rumors. Then you've heard I'm cursed. Cade interrupted. That 3 Omegas have died trying to mate with me. That the moon goddess herself has declared my bloodline tainted. Do you really want to offer your daughter for that? Ronan paled. Celeste looked stricken. I thought not, Cade continued coldly. So perhaps focus less on my companion's ability to breed, and more on the trade agreements we're here to discuss. Sera's hand trembled in her lap. Cade found it under the table, lacing his fingers through hers in a gesture of solidarity. His touch steadied her, reminded her she wasn't alone. The dinner continued, but the dynamic had shifted. Other alphas watched Cade and Sera with new understanding. The cursed king had found someone who could survive his curse. Someone who didn't need to fear the mate bond because it could never fully form. After the guests had finally departed, Cade walked Sera back to her chambers. They moved in comfortable silence through moonlit hallways until they reached her door. You were magnificent tonight, Cade said softly. Especially when Celeste tried to intimidate you during the dessert course. Sera smiled despite herself. I just asked her if Northern Omegas were taught manners or if she was a special case. Cade laughed, the sound rich and genuine. You're fiercer than you look, Sera Blackwood. I've had to be. She touched the bracelet at her wrist. Thank you for defending me, for not letting them dismiss me. I'll always defend you, Cade promised. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. You're not alone anymore. Neither of us are. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Sera found herself leaning into his touch, craving the connection she'd thought she'd never have again. Cade, she whispered, would you stay? Just for a little while? I don't want to be alone tonight. His eyes darkened with emotion. Are you sure? I'm sure. They sat together by her fireplace, talking until the moon set and dawn began to color the sky, and for the first time since her rejection, Sera fell asleep feeling safe, protected, and maybe, just maybe, wanted. 3 weeks passed like a dream Sera kept expecting to wake from. She attended council meetings at Cade's side, her insights into herb lore and healing, proving surprisingly valuable when discussing the kingdom's health initiatives. She dined with him every evening, their conversations ranging from politics to philosophy to their shared love of terrible romance novels. She wore his mother's bracelet and slept soundly for the first time in years. But it was the small moments that changed everything. Cade's hand finding hers under the table during tedious meetings, the way he saved her the ripest strawberries from the garden, how he'd started leaving books he thought she'd enjoy on her pillow. The soft look in his eyes when he thought she wasn't watching. They were falling for each other. Slowly, carefully, like two wounded creatures learning to trust again. "You're thinking too hard," Cade said from across the library where they'd taken to spending their afternoons. "I can practically hear your thoughts from here." Sera looked up from the book she'd been staring at without reading. This feels too good to be real. Like, any moment, I'll wake up back in the Crescent Moon Pack, still broken, still rejected." Cade set down his own book and crossed to her window seat, settling beside her with the easy familiarity they'd developed. "You're not broken, Sera. How many times do I have to tell you that?" "Until I believe it," she said softly. 3 healers declared me barren, Cade. Marcus rejected me because my body wouldn't give him what he wanted. My own pack sold me because I was worthless to them. How am I supposed to believe I'm anything but defective?" "Because I see you," Cade said fiercely, taking her hands in his. "Not your ability to conceive or your worth as a breeding vessel. I see Sera, the woman who makes my advisors laugh with her dry wit, who reorganized the palace herb garden and increased our healing supplies by 40%, who reads romance novels and cries at the happy endings, who's stronger than she knows and braver than she believes." Tears spilled down Sera's cheeks. "You make me feel whole." "You are whole," Cade corrected, pulling her close. Sera went willingly, tucking her head under his chin, listening to his heartbeat. "And I'm falling in love with you, every day, a little more. I know we can't have a true mate bond because of the curse, but Sera, what we have feels more real than anything I've ever experienced." Sera's breath caught. "You love me?" "I'm terrified it's too soon to say it," Cade admitted, his arms tightening around her. "We've only known each other a few weeks. But yes, I love you. The way you hum while arranging flowers, how you defend the lowest servants from the council's disdain, the strength it took to survive rejection and still have compassion left for a cursed king." He pulled back to look at her. "I love you, Sera Blackwood. If you'll have me, curse and all, I love you too," Sera whispered, the words feeling like freedom. "I didn't think I could ever feel this way again. Didn't think anyone would want me. But you do. You see me, and you want me anyway." "Not anyway," Cade corrected, cupping her face in his hands. "Because I want you, because of who you are, not in spite of it." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Sera didn't want to pull away. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted to feel alive again after 3 years of merely surviving. Their lips met softly, tentatively. No explosive mate bond ignited. No supernatural recognition flared between them. But what Sera felt was somehow better a connection built on understanding, respect, and genuine love, rather than biological imperative. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Cade rested his forehead against hers. "I want you to know something. Regardless of the curse, regardless of the fact that we can't have children, I want to make this official. I want to announce you as my chosen companion. Give you the status and protection of a queen, even if we can't complete a traditional mate bond." Sera's heart raced. "You want me to be your queen?" "I want you to be my partner in all things," Cade clarified. "The title is just making official what's already true in my heart. But only if you're ready, only if you want this too." Did she want it? To go from auctioned Omega to queen in a matter of weeks? It seemed impossible, ludicrous, like a fairy tale that couldn't possibly be real. But then she looked into Cade's eyes and saw her own feelings reflected back. Love, hope, the fragile possibility of happiness. And she realized that impossible things happened every day, like cursed kings falling for barren Omegas, like 2 broken wolves making each other whole. "Yes," Sera breathed. "Yes, I want this. I want you. I want us." Cade's answering smile was blinding. He kissed her again, deeper this time, pouring years of loneliness and hope into the connection. Sera kissed him back with equal fervor, finally allowing herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this happiness. They were so lost in each other that they didn't hear the library door open, didn't notice the figure standing in the doorway until a shocked gasp made them spring apart. Healer Maeve stood frozen, her face pale, a stack of medical texts in her arms. "Your Majesty, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just returning these books and I'll go." "Wait," Cade said, his arm still around Sera. "It's fine, Maeve. Actually, your timing might be fortuitous. Sera and I have decided to make our relationship official. I'll be announcing her as my chosen queen at the next full moon gathering." Maeve's face went, if possible, even paler. "Your Majesty, are you certain that's wise? The curse won't affect Sera," Cade interrupted. "She can't conceive, which is exactly what the curse prevents. She's safe from it." But Maeve wasn't looking at Cade. She was staring at Sera with an expression that made Sera's stomach drop. Horror mixed with guilt mixed with knowledge. "Healer Maeve," Sera said slowly. "What's wrong?" The older woman's hands trembled, the book slipping from her grasp to clatter on the floor. "I need to tell you something. Both of you. Something I should have said weeks ago, but I was sworn to silence by." She took a shaky breath. "By your former mate, Miss Sera. By Marcus of the Crescent Moon Pack." Cold dread washed through Sera. "What are you talking about?" Maeve bent to gather the fallen books, using the action to compose herself. When she straightened, her expression was anguished. "3 years ago, Marcus brought you to 3 different healers. All of them declared you barren. Do you remember?" "Of course I remember," Sera said, her voice tight. "It destroyed my life." "Those healers lied," Maeve said bluntly. "All 3 of them. On Marcus's orders and with his gold filling their pockets." The library spun around Sera. She gripped Cade's arm to steady herself. "What?" "You're not barren, Sera," Maeve continued, her voice breaking. "You never were. Marcus wanted to reject you for political reasons. There was another Omega, the daughter of an Alpha he wanted to ally with, but he needed grounds for rejection that wouldn't make him look cruel. So he paid healers to lie. To tell you that you couldn't conceive when your reproductive system is perfectly healthy." Sera couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 3 years. 3 years of believing she was broken, of being sold at auction, of accepting that she'd never have children, all based on a lie. "How do you know this?" Cade's voice was deadly quiet, his alpha power filling the room. "Because I was the 4th healer he approached," Maeve admitted, tears streaming down her face. "Before the other 3. He asked me to examine Sera and declare her barren. When I refused because my examination showed she was perfectly fertile, he threatened me, said he'd have me stripped of my healing license and driven from every pack in the territories, so I kept silent, while he found healers more willing to lie for gold." She looked at Sera with desperate guilt. "I've regretted my silence every day since. When His Majesty brought you here, I wanted to tell you immediately. But I was afraid. Afraid of Marcus's threats. Afraid of disrupting what seemed like a second chance for you." Sera's legs gave out. She would have collapsed if Cade hadn't caught her, lowering them both to the floor. "I'm not barren," she whispered. "I'm not broken. He lied. He made me believe I was worthless, and it was all a lie." Rage, unlike anything she'd ever felt, consumed her. 3 years of self-hatred. 3 years of believing the moon goddess had made a mistake with her. The humiliation of the auction. The desperate relief of believing Cade wanted her despite her flaw, all built on Marcus's lies. "I'm going to kill him," Cade said, his voice cold with lethal intent. "I'm going to find Marcus of Crescent Moon and tear him apart with my bare hands." "Get in line," Sera snarled, surprising herself with the venom in her voice. Then the full implications hit her, and her rage transformed into horror. "Cade, if I'm not barren, then the curse applies to you," Cade finished, his face draining of color. "Moon goddess, Sera, we've been." He released her abruptly, scrambling backward. "We can't be together. If we complete any kind of bond, you'll die within a year, just like the others." No, Sera said fiercely, reaching for him even as he retreated. No, we'll figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. Cade's voice cracked with desperation. I've already fallen in love with you. We've already kissed, already started forming an emotional bond. If we go any further, if we complete anything resembling a mate bond, the curse will activate and I'll watch you die, just like I watched Eliza and the others. He stood, his movements jerky with panic. I can't do that again. I can't watch you waste away knowing I caused it. I can't. His breath came in ragged gasps. You have to leave, tonight, before this goes any further. I'm not leaving. Sera stood too, her own fear warring with determination. Cade, listen to me. No, you listen. He whirled on her, eyes wild. I bought you because I thought you were safe. Because I thought finally I'd found someone I could love without killing. But you're not safe. You were never safe. And I've already started bonding with you, which means every day you stay, every moment we spend together, I'm signing your death warrant. Tears streamed down his face as he backed toward the door. I won't do it. I won't be responsible for another Omega's death. Especially not yours. Not when I love you this much. Your Majesty, wait, Maeve started. But Cade was gone, the door slamming behind him with a finality that echoed through the library. Sera stood frozen, her world shattered twice in the span of minutes. She wasn't barren. She was fertile and whole and had been lied to for years. But the revelation that should have freed her had instead destroyed her chance at happiness, because now she was exactly what Cade couldn't have, a fertile Omega who would die if they completed their bond. This is my fault, Maeve whispered. If I had spoken up years ago, if I had exposed Marcus's lies, none of this would have happened. No, Sera said hollowly. This is Marcus's fault, and the moon goddess's for cursing an innocent man for his father's sins. She touched the bracelet at her wrist, Cade's mother's silver warm against her skin. I need to fix this. How? Maeve asked helplessly. The curse has held for 7 years. 3 Omegas have already died. What can you possibly do? Sera's mind raced through everything she'd learned over the past weeks. The palace library had extensive records on curses, mate bonds, and divine interventions. She'd read them out of curiosity, never imagining they'd be relevant to her life. But now one memory surfaced, sharp and clear. A passage about blood curses and their vulnerabilities. The moon goddess cursed Cade's bloodline for his father's sins, Sera said slowly, her thoughts crystallizing. But I'm not part of his bloodline. I have no blood connection to Aldrich Thorne's crimes. What if that's the key? Maeve frowned. I don't follow. The curse prevents Cade's tainted bloodline from continuing, Sera explained, her heart beginning to race with possibility. It kills any Omega who tries to mate with him because their children would carry that tainted blood. But what if? She gripped Maeve's shoulders. What if the curse can't affect me because I'm not trying to continue his bloodline? What if I could mate with him without dying because I refuse the bond's reproductive aspect? That's never been done, Maeve said doubtfully. A partial mate bond? It goes against the very nature of what bonding means. So does everything about Cade and me, Sera countered. We've been building our own version of connection from the start. No supernatural recognition, no explosive bond. Just 2 people choosing each other despite every reason they shouldn't. She released Maeve and headed for the door. Where would Cade go? When he's upset? The East Tower, Maeve said immediately. There's an observation deck. He goes there to think. Sera ran. She found him on the tower's highest platform, standing at the edge with the wind whipping his dark hair. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. He looked like a king from legend, powerful. Alone, tragic. I told you to leave, Cade said without turning. His voice was raw. You told me a lot of things, Sera replied, approaching cautiously. You told me I wasn't broken, that I was perfect for you, that you loved me. Were those lies? No. His hands clenched on the stone railing. But they were said when I thought you were safe from my curse. Everything's different. Now. Nothing's different, Sera insisted, moving to stand beside him. Cade, Look at me. He turned slowly, and the devastation in his eyes nearly broke her. Everything is different. You can conceive, which means if we bond, you'll become pregnant, which means the curse will activate to prevent my tainted bloodline from continuing, which means you'll die. Each word came out like shards of glass. I won't let that happen. Then we don't let me conceive, Sera said simply. Cade stared at her. What? The curse targets pregnancy, Sera explained, her voice steady despite her racing heart. It prevents your bloodline from continuing. But Cade, we don't have to have children. We can bond without reproduction. We can build a life together that doesn't include pups. That's not how mate bonds work, Cade said hoarsely. The biological drive to reproduce is part of the bond. Once it's completed, your body will want to conceive. It's instinctive. Instinct can be controlled, Sera argued. We'll use precautions. Healers can provide herbs that prevent conception. We'll be careful. She took his hands, not letting him pull away. Cade, I spent 3 years believing I was barren, believing I could never give anyone children. I grieved that loss, made peace with it. And you know what? I discovered I could still have a meaningful life without being a mother. I could still have purpose and joy and love. Children are wonderful, but they're not the only path to happiness. Sera, let me finish, she interrupted. You said I was perfect for you when you thought I was barren, but you were right for the wrong reasons. I'm perfect for you because I don't need children to feel complete, because I've already lived the life of someone who can't conceive, and I know it's not the tragedy everyone claims it is. I can choose you and a child-free life and be genuinely happy with that choice. Cade's eyes searched hers desperately. What if the herbs fail? What if, despite precautions, you still conceive? I can't risk your life, Sera. I can't. Life is risk, Sera said fiercely. Every omega who takes a mate risks death in childbirth. Every wolf who hunts risks injury. Every person who loves risks heartbreak. But we do it anyway because the alternative, living afraid, living alone, never taking chances, that's not really living at all. She stepped closer, until they were nearly touching. I love you, Cade Thorne. Curse and all. I love you enough to risk everything for a chance at happiness together. The question is, do you love me enough to let me make that choice? I've loved you from the moment you challenged Celeste at that dinner, Cade admitted, his voice breaking. I've loved watching you bloom from a terrified auction victim into a confident woman. I've loved every conversation, every shared glance, every time you've made me laugh when I thought I'd forgotten how. I love you so much it terrifies me. Then be terrified with me, Sera whispered. Choose me anyway. Trust that we can build something strong enough to survive even a goddess's curse. If you die, I won't, Sera said with absolute conviction. Because we're going to do what no one else has done. We're going to beat this curse by refusing to play by its rules. No bloodline continuation, no pregnancy, just 2 wolves who love each other building a life on their own terms. Cade pulled her close, crushing her against his chest. You're sure? You really don't need children? Because Sera, if you bond with me, that door closes forever. We can't risk it even once. I'm sure, Sera said against his heart. I want you. I want mornings in the library and evenings in the garden. I want to reorganize your kingdom's healthcare and drive your council to distraction. I want to be your partner, your friend, your love. That's enough. You're enough. Moon goddess, help me, Cade breathed. I believe you. I believe in us. He tilted her face up, his eyes, searching hers one final time for any doubt. Finding none, he kissed her with desperate intensity. This kiss was different from their first, deeper, more consuming, edged with the knowledge of what they were choosing. Sera kissed him back with equal fervor, pouring 3 years of grief and rejection and hard-won strength into the connection. This was her choice, her future, her happiness, built from the ashes of Marcus's lies and the moon goddess's curse. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Cade rested his forehead against hers. We'll need to see Maeve immediately. Get those conception-preventing herbs. Set up a regimen that we follow religiously. Agreed, Sera said. And we'll need to tell the council. They should know the risks. They'll try to stop us, Cade warned. Sera smiled, fierce and determined. Let them try. The council meeting 3 days later was as contentious as expected. Cade's advisors argued, pleaded, and threatened when they learned of his intention to bond with Sera despite the curse. "Your Majesty, this is suicide," Councillor Bram shouted, his face red with agitation. "The Omega will die within a year." "Not if she doesn't conceive," Cade replied calmly. "Which she won't. Healer Maeve has prepared a comprehensive prevention regimen. Herbs can fail," another councillor protested. "Then we'll be vigilant," Sera interjected, earning startled looks. She'd insisted on attending this meeting, on facing the council herself. "I know the risks, councillors, better than any of you. I'm choosing this with full knowledge and consent." "You're choosing death," Bram said bluntly. "I'm choosing life," Sera corrected. "Real life with someone I love, rather than safety alone. And frankly, it's not your decision to make." The council erupted into fresh arguments, but Cade raised his hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute authority. "Sera Blackwood is my chosen mate. We will bond at the next full moon, which is in 5 days. You may accept this or not, but it will happen. The only question is whether you'll support your king or work against him." One by one, the councillors bowed their heads in reluctant acceptance. Only Councillor Thea, the eldest, rose to speak with a different tone. "Your Majesty, might I suggest a different approach?" Her weathered face was thoughtful. "What if we consulted the moon goddess directly? Sought her blessing or at least her acknowledgement of this unusual bond?" Cade frowned. "How?" "The sacred grove," Thea said. "Where your father's crimes first invoked her wrath. On the full moon, the barrier between our world and the divine thins. If you and Miss Sera go there together, the goddess might choose to appear, to give her blessing or adjust the curse's parameters." Hope flickered in Sera's chest. "Could it work?" "It's unprecedented," Thea admitted. "But so is everything about your situation. The goddess cursed. Your bloodline, your majesty. But perhaps she never anticipated someone like Miss Sera. Someone who could love you without needing to continue that bloodline. Perhaps that changes things." Cade looked at Sera, silent question in his eyes. She nodded. "We try. What's the worst that can happen?" "The goddess refuses and we bond anyway," Cade said. "Either way, we move forward together." The sacred grove stood at the kingdom's heart, where ancient trees formed a perfect circle around a moonstone altar. Sera and Cade approached alone on the night of the full moon, hand in hand, hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. "Are you ready?" Cade asked as they reached the altar. "No," Sera admitted, "but let's do this anyway." They knelt before the altar as Councillor Thea had instructed, heads bowed in supplication. The full moon rose above the trees, bathing everything in silver light. And then, between one breath and the next, they were no longer alone. The moon goddess manifested as light-given form, beautiful and terrible, ancient and eternal. Her voice resonated in their bones rather than their ears. "Cade Thorne, you dare bring a fertile Omega before me, after I explicitly cursed your bloodline to end?" Cade's voice shook but held firm. "Great goddess, I come not to defy you but to beg your understanding. Sera is fertile, yes, but we don't seek to continue my bloodline. We seek only each other. A bond without reproduction, love without legacy." The goddess turned her attention to Sera, and the weight of that gaze nearly crushed her. "You would accept this? A bonding that denies you children? That goes against the very purpose of the mate bond?" "Yes," Sera said, raising her head to meet that overwhelming presence. "Because I've learned that purpose isn't singular, goddess. I can have purpose without being a mother. I can have fulfillment loving this wolf without bearing his pups. That's my choice to make." "You were lied to," the goddess said, and Sera heard something almost like sympathy in the divine voice. "Made to believe you were barren by a cruel alpha seeking to discard you. You suffered greatly for his lies." "I did," Sera agreed. "And that suffering taught me that my worth isn't tied to my womb, that I can be whole, be happy, be enough without children. So when I tell you I choose a child-free bonding with Cade, I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm choosing what I genuinely want." The goddess was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had softened fractionally. "Cade Thorne, your father's sins were grievous. The curse was meant to ensure his tainted legacy died with you." "I know," Cade said, "and I accept that judgment. But goddess, Sera isn't part of that legacy. Bonding with her without reproduction doesn't continue my bloodline. It simply allows me one chance at happiness while still honoring your curse's intent." "You ask me to split hairs," the goddess said, but there was the faintest hint of amusement in her tone. "To allow the bond but prevent its natural conclusion. We ask for your blessing on an unconventional path," Sera said, "one that honors both your curse and our love." The divine light intensified until Sera had to close her eyes against its brilliance. When it faded, the goddess's voice came one final time. Softer now, almost gentle. "Very well. I will adjust the curse's parameters. You may bond, Cade Thorne and Sera Blackwood. Your connection will be real and lasting. But know this: should Sera conceive even once, the curse will activate immediately. Her life will be forfeit within the year. This is my mercy and my warning. Choose wisely." The presence withdrew, leaving them alone in the moonlit grove. Sera and Cade stared at each other in stunned disbelief. "She said yes," Sera breathed. "The goddess actually said yes. With conditions," Cade said. "Strict conditions. That we were already planning to follow," Sera reminded him. She took his hands, pulling him to his feet. "Cade, we can do this. We can be together." "Carefully," Cade emphasized. "Very, very carefully." "Carefully," Sera agreed. "But together." They bonded that night in the sacred grove, under the moon goddess's watchful eye. No explosive recognition, no supernatural fireworks. Just a slow, steady building of connection as they exchanged vows of their own creation. "I choose you," Cade said, marking her neck with gentle teeth. "Curse and all, now and always." "I choose you," Sera replied, completing the bond. "Not for heirs or bloodlines or status, just for you." The bond settled into place like coming home, warm and right and real. And crucially, miraculously, without triggering the curse, they had done the impossible. Two broken wolves making each other whole. 6 months later, Sera stood in the palace garden, supervising the planting of new medicinal herbs. Her healing initiative had expanded across the kingdom, and infant mortality had dropped 15%. She wore the queen's crown with surprising ease, her auburn hair twisted into an elegant style that showcased Cade's mother's bracelet, now joined by her bonding mark. "There you are." Cade's voice came from behind her. "I've been looking everywhere." Sera turned, smiling at her mate, her king, her partner in this unconventional life they'd built. "I was just finishing the planting schedule." "Leave it for the gardeners," Cade said, pulling her close. "I want to show you something." He led her to the east wing, to a room she'd never seen before. Inside, easels and paints and canvas filled the space, a fully equipped art studio. "You said you used to love sketching," Cade explained. "Before Marcus's rejection. I thought maybe you'd like to try again." Tears spilled down Sera's cheeks as she took in the thoughtful gift. "Cade, this is long overdue," he finished. "You've spent 6 months helping me be a better king. Let me help you rediscover who you were before life tried to break you." Sera kissed him, pouring gratitude and love into the connection. When they pulled apart, she rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Are you happy?" Cade asked softly. "Truly? No regrets about the path we've chosen?" "Not a single one," Sera said honestly. "I have purpose, partnership, love. I get to wake up next to my best friend every morning. I get to build a kingdom's healthcare system, and paint in the afternoons, and read terrible romance novels with you at night. Why would I regret any of that?" "Because society says you should want children," Cade pointed out. "Society said I was broken," Sera countered. "Society said you were cursed beyond redemption. Society was wrong about both of us." She pulled back to look at him. "We made our own path, Cade, and it's perfect." He smiled, that soft expression he reserved only for her. "Yes, it is. You're perfect. We're perfect. Two broken wolves, Sera said, making each other whole. Cade finished, and in the art studio filled with sunlight and possibility, the Barren Omega who wasn't barren, and the cursed king who'd found his loophole, sealed their happiness with a kiss that needed no divine intervention to be magical. 2 years later, the anniversary of their bonding arrived with the kind of perfect autumn day that seemed designed for celebration. Golden leaves drifted through the palace gardens, and the air carried the crisp promise of winter's approach. Sera stood before her easel in the studio Cade had built for her, adding final touches to a painting of the sacred grove where they'd received the moon goddess's blessing. Her art had become renowned throughout the territories. Galleries in 3 kingdoms displayed her work, and the proceeds funded her expanding healthcare initiatives. She'd discovered that her grandmother's herb lore, combined with her own artistic eye for detail, made her exceptionally talented at botanical illustration. Her medical texts were now used to train healers across the realm. Still working? Lyra's voice came from the doorway. The celebration starts in 2 hours, and you're covered in paint. Sera looked down at her dress, indeed splattered with various colors, and laughed. I lost track of time. This painting needs to be perfect for Cade. Everything you create is perfect, Lyra said, crossing to examine the canvas. Oh, Sera, he's going to love this. The painting captured the moment of their bonding. 2 figures kneeling before the moonstone altar, divine light cascading around them, their hands intertwined. Sera had worked on it for months, wanting to commemorate the night their impossible love became real. Help me get cleaned up? Sera asked. I need to look like a queen, not a paint-splattered artist. An hour later, Sera barely recognized herself in the mirror. Lyra had worked magic, transforming her into something ethereal. Her auburn hair was swept up in intricate braids woven with gold thread. The gown Cade had commissioned was deep emerald, bringing out the green in her eyes, with delicate embroidery depicting herbs and healing plants, a nod to her work. But it was the jewelry that made her breath catch. Cade's mother's bracelet, as always, on her left wrist. And now, for their bonding anniversary, he'd had a matching necklace created silver moon phases that caught the light as she moved. He's waiting for you in the Great Hall, Lyra said, her eyes suspiciously bright. The entire court is assembled. It's going to be quite the celebration. Sera made her way through familiar corridors, nodding to servants who'd become friends, guards who respected rather than dismissed her. 2 years had transformed her from auctioned property to beloved queen. The palace staff adored her healthcare reforms and her genuine interest in their well-being. The council had grudgingly admitted she'd been good for their king. Cade smiled more, laughed freely, ruled with compassion tempered by strength. The great hall doors opened, and Sera's breath caught at the sight before her. Hundreds of candles illuminated the space, casting everything in warm, golden light. Flowers from her garden, the herbs and medicinal plants she'd cultivated, had been arranged in stunning displays. The court stood in formal arrangement, but their faces held genuine warmth rather than political calculation, and at the center of it all, Cade waited. He wore formal attire in deep black and silver, the crown of the Alpha King on his dark hair, but his eyes held only love as he watched her approach. When she reached him, he took her hands, bringing them to his lips. You're breathtaking, he murmured. You're biased, Sera replied, smiling. I'm accurate, he corrected. Then, louder, addressing the assembled court. 2 years ago, I did something unprecedented. I claimed a mate, despite the curse that had claimed 3 before her. Many of you thought I was mad. Some believed I was being reckless with an innocent life. All of you feared for what would happen. He turned to Sera, his expression tender. But Sera taught me that conventional paths aren't the only ones worth walking, that sometimes the broken pieces fit together in ways no one expects, that love doesn't require the traditional markers to be real and lasting and true. Sera felt tears prick her eyes as Cade continued. Together, we've proven that a mate bond doesn't need to produce heirs to be valid, that a queen doesn't need to bear royal children to be invaluable to her kingdom. Sera has revolutionized our healthcare, brought art and beauty to our court, and given me something I thought I'd lost forever, hope. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring white gold with a moonstone center, surrounded by tiny emeralds. In human traditions, they exchange rings as symbols of commitment. I know we've already bonded, already committed before the moon goddess herself. But I wanted to give you something that celebrates not what we are, but what we've chosen to be. Cade slipped the ring onto her finger. My partner, my equal, my love, today and always, by choice rather than fate. Sera couldn't speak past the emotion clogging her throat. Instead, she pulled him down for a kiss that made the court erupt in cheers and applause. When they finally broke apart, Sera managed to find her voice. I have something for you too. It's in the studio. I wanted to finish it before tonight. They made their way through the celebrating court, Cade's hand never leaving hers, until they reached the art studio. Sera unveiled the painting with trembling hands. Cade stood frozen before it, his eyes drinking in every detail. Sera, he breathed. It's perfect. It's us. That night, exactly as I remember it. I wanted you to have something that captured the moment everything changed, Sera said softly, when the impossible became real. Cade pulled her close, resting his chin atop her head. Do you know what I'm most grateful for? What? That Marcus lied, Cade said, and Sera pulled back to stare at him in shock. He smiled sadly. I know that sounds terrible, but if he hadn't lied, if you'd never been declared barren and sold at auction, we never would have met. I would still be alone, convinced my curse meant eternal isolation. You would be trapped with a manipulative alpha who never deserved you. That's a dark way to look at it, Sera said, but she understood what he meant. Sometimes our worst moments lead to our best ones, Cade said. Your rejection, my curse, they were awful, painful, but they brought us here, to this moment, together. A knock interrupted them. Gabriel, Cade's most trusted advisor, stood in the doorway with an unusual expression, something between concern and curiosity. Your Majesties, forgive the interruption, but there's someone here who's requesting an audience. He says it's urgent and relates to past debts. Cade's expression darkened. Who? Marcus Blackwood of the Crescent Moon Pack. The name fell like a stone into still water. Sera felt her body go rigid, old fear and newer rage warring within her. Marcus, here, after 2 years of silence. Absolutely not, Cade growled. Have him removed from the palace grounds immediately. Wait, Sera heard herself say. Both men turned to her in surprise. I want to see him. Sera, Cade started. I need to, she interrupted, her voice growing stronger. 2 years ago, I sobbed on an auction block because I believed his lies. I believed I was broken, worthless, defective. I want him to see what I've become. I want him to know that his cruelty didn't destroy me, it freed me. Cade studied her face, then nodded slowly. Together. Then, we face him together. They returned to a smaller receiving room where Marcus waited. Sera barely recognized him. The confident alpha who'd rejected her had been replaced by someone diminished, thinner, older, with defeat written in every line of his body. He looked up as they entered, his eyes widening as he took in Sera's transformation. The queen's crown, the royal gown, the bonding mark visible at her throat, the way she stood beside the Alpha King not as property, but as an equal. Sera, Marcus breathed. The rumors were true. You're queen. I am, Sera said, her voice steady. What do you want, Marcus? He flinched at her cold tone. I needed to. He swallowed hard. The Crescent Moon Pack has fallen on hard times. The Omega I rejected you for. Celine, she wasn't what I thought. Her father's alliance proved worthless. Without your grandmother's herb knowledge, our healers have struggled. We've lost members to preventable illnesses. Good, Sera said flatly. You cast me out for being barren, which was a lie you paid healers to. You sold me like livestock. Why would I help you now? Because you're better than I am, Marcus said desperately. You always were. I was a fool, Sera. I know that now. I threw away something precious because I wanted political advantage, and I've paid for it every day since. Not nearly enough, Cade said, his voice deadly quiet. You lied to Sera. made her believe she was broken, caused her years of suffering. Give me one reason I shouldn't have you thrown in the dungeons for that. You can't, Marcus said, defeat in his voice. I'm an alpha of a sovereign pack, but you can refuse to help us, and we will fall without aid. Sera looked at the man who destroyed her life, and felt nothing. No lingering love, no burning hatred, just a distant pity for someone who'd sabotaged his own happiness for power that turned out to be illusory. I'll help the Crescent Moon Pack, she said quietly. Marcus's head jerked up in surprise. Not for you, for the innocents in your pack, who don't deserve to suffer for their alpha's mistakes. I'll send healers, medical supplies, and copies of my grandmother's herb lore. But you, Marcus, are never to contact me again, never to speak my name, never to claim any connection to me. Is that clear? Yes, Marcus whispered. Thank you. I don't deserve— No, you don't, Sera interrupted. But I'm not doing this because you deserve it. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Because unlike you, I don't punish the innocent for one person's cruelty. She stepped closer, letting him see the strength in her eyes. I want you to know something, Marcus. You declaring me Barren was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it led me here, to a king who values me for who I am rather than what I can provide, to a life of purpose and meaning, to genuine love. She touched Cade's hand. So thank you. Thank you for lying, for rejecting me, for selling me at auction. Thank you for every cruel thing you did, because it brought me to exactly where I was meant to be. Marcus's face crumpled. I'm sorry. For everything. You deserve so much better. I know, Sera said simply, and I found it. Now leave. Gabriel will arrange the aid for your pack, but I never want to see you again. After Marcus had been escorted out, Cade pulled Sera into his arms. Are you all right? I'm perfect, Sera said, and meant it. Seeing him, I realized I don't carry any of that pain anymore. He can't hurt me. He's just nothing. A footnote in the story of how I found you. You're remarkable, Cade murmured into her hair. No, offering help to someone who treated you so badly. I'm helping his pack, not him, Sera clarified. But yes, I can afford to be generous now. I have everything I ever wanted, not the traditional things, but the real things. Purpose, partnership, love. Why would I let old bitterness poison that? They returned to the celebration, where the court had moved into dancing. Cade led Sera onto the floor, and they moved together with the easy synchronization of 2 years of partnership. Do you ever regret it? Sera asked as they swayed. That we can't have children? That your bloodline ends with you? Cade's arms tightened around her. Never. Leo will inherit after me, and he'll be an excellent king. We're free to build our lives around what we want rather than what's expected. And Sera, what I want is you. Just you. Forever. Forever, Sera echoed. I like the sound of that. As the evening wore on, Sera found herself on the terrace with healer Maeve, both watching the celebration through the windows. You've come so far, Maeve said softly. From the broken girl on the auction block to a queen who heals her kingdom. I was never broken, Sera replied, the words now truth rather than hope. Just different. It took finding Cade to understand that. And your decision not to have children? Maeve asked carefully. No regrets as time passes? Sera considered this, honestly. Sometimes I wonder what a child with Cade's eyes would look like. But wondering isn't the same as regretting. Our life is full, Maeve. Between my healthcare work and his ruling and our partnership, we have purpose. We have each other. We have a kingdom we're making better together. She smiled. Children are wonderful, but they're not the only path to a meaningful life. I know that now. You've changed minds across the territories, Maeve said. Other childless couples have reached out, saying you've given them hope that they can still have valuable, happy lives. Good, Sera said fiercely. For too long, worth has been tied to reproduction. But there are so many ways to leave a legacy. Art, healing, ruling justly, loving completely. Those matter just as much as bloodlines. Cade found her there, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. "Our guests are asking for the queen. Apparently, you promised to demonstrate some of the new healing techniques?" "I did," Sera confirmed, leaning back against him. "Are you ready to be my assistant? I need someone with steady hands." "Always," Cade said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I'm always ready to support your work." They returned to the hall together, and Sera spent the next hour showing interested nobles the proper way to prepare poultices, explaining herb properties, discussing her plans to establish healing schools in every major territory. Cade stood beside her throughout, handing her supplies, answering questions about funding, making it clear through every action that he valued her work as much as his own. This was partnership. This was what a mate bond could be when freed from traditional expectations. As midnight approached, the celebration began winding down. Guests departed with well wishes and promises to attend next year's anniversary. Finally, Sera and Cade found themselves alone in their private chambers, the weight of the crown finally removed, the formal clothes exchanged for comfortable night clothes. 2 years, Sera said, settling into Cade's arms in their bed. "It feels like longer and shorter at the same time." "I know what you mean," Cade agreed, running his fingers through her unbound hair. "Sometimes I still can't believe you're real, that you're mine, that we made this work against every odd." "We make a good team," Sera said. "The cursed king and the barren queen." "The king who found love," Cade corrected, "and the queen who revolutionized healthcare, created stunning art, and proved that worth isn't measured in offspring." Sera turned in his arms to face him. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me when I was invisible. For wanting me when I was worthless. For building a life with me that honors who we are, rather than what we're supposed to be." Her eyes filled with tears. "For loving me not in spite of my barrenness, but without it mattering at all." "You were never worthless," Cade said fiercely. "Even when you believed you were. Even when you believed you were. When you sobbed on that auction block, you were extraordinary. I just had the privilege of seeing it first." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity and the passion of genuine connection. No mate bond frenzy, no biological imperative. Just two people who'd chosen each other every day for 2 years and would continue choosing each other for all the years to come. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Sera thought about the journey that had brought them here, the rejection, the auction, the lies and the curse, the impossible love that became real. "I'm glad Marcus lied," she whispered into the darkness. Cade's arms tightened around her. "Because it brought you to me? Because it taught me that broken is just another word for different," Sera said. "That traditional paths aren't the only ones worth walking. That sometimes the worst things lead to the best things." She pressed a kiss to his chest. "I'm glad you're cursed too." "Now that's definitely a..." "First," Cade said, amusement in his voice. "I'm serious," Sera insisted. "Your curse means we built this bond on choice rather than fate, on compatibility rather than biology, on love rather than instinct. Would you really trade that for a traditional mate bond?" Cade was quiet for a moment, considering. "No," he finally said. "You're right. What we have is ours, not given by the moon goddess or dictated by biology. We created this together, and that makes it more precious than any fated bond." 2 years ago, I sobbed that I was broken, Sera said softly. "And you said I was perfect." "You were right, Cade. I am perfect not because I'm flawless, but because I'm exactly who I need to be for the life we're building together." "Perfect for each other," Cade agreed. "That's all that matters." They fell asleep intertwined, the cursed king and his barren queen, 2 broken wolves who'd made each other whole, proving that sometimes the greatest love stories aren't the traditional ones, but the impossible ones that refuse to stay impossible. And in the morning, they'd wake up and do it all again, choosing each other, choosing their unconventional path, choosing happiness over expectation, because they were perfect, not despite their flaws but because of them, forever. 5 years later, the palace courtyard filled with wolves from every territory, gathered for the annual healthcare summit that had become Sera's signature achievement. She stood at the podium, no longer the trembling Omega from the auction block, but a queen who commanded respect through competence and compassion. 5 years ago, Infant mortality in our territories was at 30%. Sera announced, her voice carrying clearly. Today, it's down to 8%. That's hundreds of lives saved because we chose to value healing knowledge over tradition. The crowd erupted in applause. Cade watched from the side, his expression radiating pride. Their eyes met across the space, and even after 5 years, Sera felt that spark of connection, not a fated bond, but something equally powerful. Choice, daily, deliberate choice. After the presentation, a young Omega approached hesitantly. She couldn't have been more than 20, with fear and hope warring in her eyes. "Your Majesty," she whispered, "I was told I can't conceive. My mate wants to reject me because of it. But seeing you, you're a queen. You're happy. You're valued. How did you do it?" Sera's heart clenched with recognition. She saw herself in this girl, that desperate need to believe she could still have worth, still have happiness, still have love. "What's your name?" Sera asked gently. "Mira. Mira, listen to me carefully." Sera took the girl's hands. "Your worth isn't in your womb. It's not in whether you can bear children or strengthen bloodlines or fulfill anyone else's expectations. Your worth is inherent in your kindness, your strength, your unique gifts that have nothing to do with reproduction. But my mate, if your mate can only value you for breeding potential, he's not worthy of you," Sera said firmly. "A true mate, a real partner, sees all of you. Not just what you can provide, but who you are." She squeezed Mira's hands. "I found that. You can too, but first you have to believe you deserve it." Tears streamed down Mira's face. "Thank you. I needed to hear that from someone who understands." As Mira walked away with straighter shoulders, Kate appeared at Sera's side. "You just changed that girl's life." "I hope so," Sera said. "No one should have to sob on an auction block believing they're broken. If our story prevents even one Omega from feeling that despair, it's worth being public about our unconventional bond." That evening, they walked through Sera's expanded medicinal garden, now covering 3 full acres of palace grounds. Students from the healing school she'd established worked among the plants, learning the herb lore that had nearly died with her. "Grandmother, do you ever wonder what our life would have looked like if the curse hadn't existed?" Sera asked, trailing her fingers over lavender blooms. "If we could have had children?" Cade pulled her close, considering the question seriously. "Sometimes. But then I think about what we've built instead. Your healing schools have trained 200 healers who've spread across 5 territories. Your art hangs in galleries and inspires others. Our partnership has shown countless couples that childless bonds can be just as meaningful as traditional ones." He kissed her forehead. "We've touched more lives than most parents ever do. That's its own kind of legacy." "I used to think legacy meant bloodlines," Sera admitted. "Children carrying on your name, your traits, your history. But legacy is really about the impact you leave behind, the lives you change, the world you make better." "Exactly." Cade's arms tightened around her. "And Sera, our legacy is everywhere. In the healers you've trained, in the minds you've changed about the value of childless wolves, in the art that will outlive us both, in the happiness we've shown is possible when you refuse to let others define your path." They reached the center of the garden where a new statue had been erected, a gift from the Healers Guild. It depicted an Omega and an Alpha standing together, equals, with healing herbs at their feet and stars above their heads. The plaque read, "Queen Sera and King Cade Thorn, proof that love transcends expectation and worth transcends tradition." Sera stared at it, overwhelmed. "They really see us that way. Because it's true," Cade said. "We broke every rule, defied every expectation, and created something beautiful from what others called broken." A commotion at the garden entrance drew their attention. Leo, now 12 and Cade's official heir, came running with a massive wolf pup struggling in his arms. "Uncle Cade, Aunt Sera, look what followed me home from the forest!" The pup was enormous, clearly from powerful bloodlines, with unusual silver-tipped fur. It licked Leo's face enthusiastically, while the boy laughed. "Can we keep him? Please? I'll take care of him, I promise." Sera and Cade exchanged glances, then smiled. "Of course," Sera said. "Every future king needs a loyal companion." "Yes," Leo whooped. nearly dropping the squirming pup. "Did you hear that? You're staying." As the boy ran off to find food for his new friend, Cade chuckled. "We're going to spoil that child." "We already do," Sera pointed out. "But that's what aunts and uncles are for, loving other people's children without the full responsibility." "Another benefit of our arrangement," Cade teased, pulling her toward the palace. "We get all the fun parts of Leo without the sleepless nights." That night, lying in their bed, with moonlight streaming through the windows, Sera reflected on the impossible journey from auction block to here. 5 years of partnership, 5 years of proving that broken was just another word for different, 5 years of choosing each other, every single day. "Cade?" she whispered into the darkness. If you could go back to that auction night knowing everything that would come after, would you still bid?" She felt him smile against her hair. 1 million gold was the bargain of a lifetime. I'd bid 10 million. "That's your royal treasury talking." "No," Cade corrected, tilting her face up to his. "That's my heart talking. Sera, you took a cursed king who'd resigned himself to eternal loneliness and gave him partnership, purpose, and love. You took grief and isolation and transformed it into joy. You're worth more than all the gold in all the territories." "I was sobbing on that auction block," Sera reminded him, though her voice was thick with emotion. "Broken, worthless, rejected." "You were surviving," Cade corrected. "You were enduring. You were strong enough to keep breathing even when life had taken everything from you. That's not worthless, Sera. That's extraordinary." She kissed him then, pouring 5 years of gratitude and love and absolute certainty into the connection. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "Thank you," Sera whispered. "For what?" "For bidding higher. For seeing perfect where everyone else saw broken. For building this life with me." She touched the bonding mark at her throat. "For proving that the best love stories aren't the traditional ones written by fate, but the impossible ones we write ourselves." "Thank you for staying," Cade replied. "For taking a chance on a cursed king. For teaching me that legacy isn't about bloodlines, it's about the lives we touch and the love we share." They fell asleep wrapped in each other. 2 wolves who'd been called broken and had proven that broken was just another word for different, for unconventional, for perfect, in their own unique way. And in the morning, they'd wake up and choose each other, again, just as they had for 5 years. Just as they would for all the years to come, because some love stories don't need fate or bloodlines or traditional endings. Some love stories just need 2 people brave enough to write their own. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.